Okay, so we are, excuse me, we're up to Mishlei 1629. And because we have some guests, then I'm going to articulate the methodology a little bit more than I usually do and the procedure. So we start off by reading the pasuk and translating it and trying to acknowledge all of the ambiguities in translation here. So we are up to, 1629. Ish Hamas yefate re'ehu v'holicho b'derech lo tov. Who would like to try to translate this?
A person of violence.
Okay. Person of violence. That is one translation. I'm going to go ahead and say, just type in the transliteration here because that's going to be a word that has multiple meanings. Yep.
Flatters, seduces his friend.
Okay, yeah. So here's the thing, right? So seduces, I think, is usually the good translation. Okay, seduces his fellow. The only problem is that in English, then seduces has a usually like a sexual connotation, and so it is a little weird to say seduces his fellow. So I'm going to propose that we use the word entices. But if you think of a better word, then let me know. You could argue it's misleads, but I feel like misleads doesn't have the same implication of like appealing to someone in order to deceive them in some way. So I'm going to go with entices. So entices his fellow, and I'm saying fellow here because I know sometimes like people translate v'ahavta l're'acha kamocha as love your, love your. Well, I don't know if they actually translate this like love your friend as yourself, but in that context, re'ehu means like your fellow, or like I think we saw one time that comrade might be the most accurate translation, even though like it has communistic connotations. Yeah, Hoodie.
So I'm not going off the Hebrew word because my Hebrew is not great, but just off the English word you used.
Yeah.
Could corrupt work here?
Corrupt could be good. I think corrupt is I guess preempting and like injecting the second half of the pasuk into the first one. So in other words, you'll see when we do the second half, that's an accurate like statement about what he's doing, but I don't know if that's the best translation for that word. Yeah. Yeah, my dad has a question.
Influences, would that be?
Yeah, influence is good, but influence can have a positive connotation, and this is almost always a negative connotation. Yeah. All right, so let's go with this for now. We'll see as we analyze it. Maybe something else will come here. Oh, I didn't even include the dictionary here. So I'll just show you in this BDB, which is the dictionary that of biblical Hebrew that I use. It says, okay, be open-minded, simple. Oh, that's actually another good point here. Is one of Mishlei's archetypes of foolishness is a pesi, same root, which means someone who's like gullible. Okay, so to be enticed, deceived, persuaded, like if you're again seducing a woman. That's right. And Mishlei also talks about a man being seduced by a woman. Persuaded, deceived. Yeah. So beguiled is another one, but we just don't use that word enough in English. So we'll say entices for now. Okay. Yeah, the holicho b'derech lo tov. So Isaiah, you're back to your translation.
Draws him along a bad path.
Okay, that's good. So draws him along is a good translation. I'm just trying to think if that's the primary one. I'm gonna go ahead with the most literal thing, which is and causes him to go/walk. Okay, or draws him along. So the difficulty here is that the word halicha means to walk or go, same word in Hebrew, but it also has the implication of leadership, of like leading someone, which is where Isaiah is getting it from. On a, how do you say b'derech lo tov?
A bad path.
It does not say bad path.
A path that is not good.
Yeah, a path that is not good. Okay. Yeah. It's funny. When I was going over this with someone else this morning or this afternoon, and they kept on translating it's bad. I'm like, show me where it says bad in the pasuk, So it's it's very easy to just say lo tov. Yeah. Okay.
Also, I was saying that it means that it draws him like in the leading kind of way because it says holicho. So it's like the holicha is directed at him.
I'm losing track of your pronouns here. So who's the him?
The person who's leading is leading along the person who walks because it's holicha. So he's doing the whole lot.
Right. So the person of Hamas is leading the fellow on a bad path. Oh, I see what you're saying. Leading, yeah, leads him along a path that's not good. Yeah. if that's what you're trying to point out. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I have here the BDB dictionary definition of Hamas. So violence is good. It does have the implication. Does it not say that here? Hold on. Yeah. Well, anyone have another translation of Hamas that is more specific than violence? I guess like a specific crime.
Like chaos.
Chaos. I'm going to ask where you're going to get that from. Where you're getting that from, and I think you're going to say the same answer that I was thinking of.
I'm not sure. I just remember learning that it was chaos.
Okay. Yeah, Yurifki?
I was also thinking that. I feel like do we not get it from Beracious?
Yeah, where in Bekius?
Like in the beginning, no?
No,
And
not in the beginning.
also is it like with the people, like that they're like Hamas, like that they're causing chaos?
Yeah, which people?
Babel? Like the Tower of Babel?
No, not there.
Was it Sodom?
Nope, earlier.
Dora Flaga.
Yeah, actually, sorry, I think Ayala was right. Sodom does have this, but yeah, it's not Dorflaga, that's Babel. No one?
The flood?
The flood,
Huh?
yeah, right. The generation of the flood, right? So if you look there, then we have it actually mentions it twice. So it says this is in Berashit 6:11. Vatishaches haaretz lifnei Elokim. The land or the earth became corrupted before God. Vatimela haaretz Hamas, and land became filled with Hamas. And then V'yar Elokim es aretz v'hinei nishchasa. God saw the land that it had become corrupt, because all flesh had corrupted its way on the land. And God said to Noach, the end of all flesh has come before me, because the earth has become filled with Hamas before them. And behold, I will destroy the land. So Rashi, quoting Chazal, says for Hamas, I think he says what Hamas is. Hold on. Yeah, Hamas is gezel, is robbery. Okay, so robbery is the other translation I was looking for here. So robbery, robbery. And then the translation I like using for Hamas to meld them, I think we should keep a flexibility in our minds for this, but like I think you could also say violent crime. Okay, because I think that's like a category we have in our society when we talk about violent crime. Okay, so Hamas is violence, robbery, or violent crime. That's one ambiguity here. The other one is holicho is causes him to go or walk or leads him along on a path that's not good. Yeah, I think those are the only ambiguities here. Okay, so the next step we do in our shiur is we look at what I call the minimalist, the translations and the minimalist commentaries. These are the commentaries that only translate and don't explain. Okay, and then we look at 3 English translations. So we have Saad Yagon, who the translation of Saad Yagon, who translates Mishlei into Judeo-Arabic, and then we have Rav Kafach, who translates it back into Hebrew, so we can see the difference. V'holicho is umolitho b'derech she'ein bo tov. So it's slightly different rendering here, and causes him to go. Actually, I'm not even going to translate the first part because that part's the same. But on a path that has no good in it. Okay. So that's how he's translating, not b'derech lo tov, but b'derech she'ein bo tov, that there is no good in it. Okay, good in it or on it. Okay, then we have the Targum Ksuvim, which is the Aramaic translation, which I had ChatGPT translate each word here. Gavra chatofa meshargig chavre. So a man who is, so here you see also a bunch of different possibilities. Impetuous, rash, aggressive, possibly violent or impulsive. Meshargig is to lead astray, to pervert. So whoever said corrupt, Hudi said corrupt. I guess you could say that for the Targum maybe, or to mislead. Chavre, his fellow. Movil le ba'orcha de lo shapira, and then leads him on a path that's not good. Okay, so I would say here. So this is where we'll call this Hudi's translation here, which is corrupts. What is it? Corrupts his fellow. Okay. So there's that. Then we've got, I did not like the English translations this time around. Our scroll is okay, but the man of violence entices his companion. Companion's not a bad word here, and leads him in a way that is not good. Yes, our scroll is fine, but our scroll is close enough to ours that I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Rav Hirsch says a man of iniquity, which first of all, I think that is not what Hamas means. Hamas is not iniquity. Iniquity is, or I mean, again, this is whoever translated the English of Rav Hirsch, shall persuade Okay, so like I said, persuade is not inaccurate, but it doesn't quite carry that negative connotation that entices has. His neighbor, okay, neighbor's fine, and shall lead him in ways which are not good. I don't know why Rav Hirsch pluralizes it. It just says way. So I think this is a translation that is not good. And an altar, I don't know what he's doing. A lawless man gulls his companion. First of all, I thought a gull was a bird. I've never heard. It might be related to beguile. I don't know, and then lawless man strikes me because we had lawless man a couple psukim ago, didn't we? Or unless I'm thinking my morning Mishlei shiur. Did we have lawless man? Yeah, in 27. So Blial was literally without a yoke, So I don't like lawless man for ish Hamas, and leads him in a way that is not good. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these. And I will move these and then copy and paste and put this into the chat so that you can consult it at your will.
Question.
Yes.
Lawless, does that refer to laws that are our laws, or lawless means just, kind of free form?
Good question. I mean, it's hard to tell because I don't even agree with Alter's translation of the word Hamas. I just don't know where he's getting it from. And usually he has a commentary on the bottom where he explains where he got it from. Robert Alter, by the way, just for those who don't know, Alter is a modern translator. He is Jewish. He's not religious. And he did something that is, I think, not unprecedented, but very rare, is he single-handedly translated the whole Tanakh. It took him decades. And it's just a very, very good translation that takes into account academic findings, and different, non-Masoretic texts. And he preserves the poetry. So he is very good, but sometimes I just don't know what he's doing. And usually he explains himself. I just don't get it here. So
perspective and context, very important.
Yeah. In fact, what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to look at his Chumash commentary for 1 second and see what he says. Okay, so in Bereishis, on the pasuk that we just looked at, let's see if he has to explain it because it uses the term twice and it's like a central plot point. So in Bereishis, he translates it as and the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with outrage. That's very interesting. And God saw the earth, and look, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. Now God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, and the earth is filled with outrage. So he says here, filled with outrage. So he does not explain the word. He just says humankind had been enjoined to multiply and fill the earth, but the proliferation of human population leads to a proliferation of lawless behavior. This is one of the several verb echoes of the creation story, suggesting first a perversion of creation by man, and then a reversal of creation by God. Yeah, so I just don't know where he's getting outrage from. Apparently he is very reachable by email. So I've never actually done that, even though I quote him so much. So maybe I'll email him, but we're not going to get a response right now. I forgot to comment, by the way, on what some of you said that chaos. So if you recall where you associate chaos, let me know. I mean, he seems to be learning that way for Bereishis, but I'm not familiar with Hamas being a chaos. Okay. Oh, and also for those who are wondering, Hamas, the terrorist movement, the word, so linguistically has nothing to do with this Hamas, because that Hamas means I don't know the Arabic, but the Islamic resistance movement. You have to wonder whether and it's Arabic, but you have to wonder whether they chose that name like intentionally, because it does fit very well. But it's not. They're not called the violent movement, even though they are. Okay, so next what we do is now we list all the questions and problems, and we do not give answers. Okay, we are not giving answers here. The only way you can sneak in an answer, which is that if there's an ambiguity in the translation that like requires the question to be formulated in a fleshed out way. Okay, but we're not going to answer until we get to the answer portion. Yeah, Hoodie.
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Sure.
First is why is it lo tov and not ra? Like why?
Okay, why is this path called not good instead of bad? Okay, sounds like an understatement. Okay, which I mean might be an understatement, but it was weird if that's the case. Yeah, and second question.
Also, just like why use 2 words when you can use 1 unless you're like trying to get a message
Okay,
across?
right. So it's an understatement, and it's not economical.
Right.
What's the word? It's not lacks brevity. It lacks brevity. Yeah. What did you say?
Efficient.
Yeah, right. You could say it's needlessly verbose. we can have a bunch of weeks today. Yeah. By the way, since our mind is in Bereishis, I just want to point out also that I forgot where the first time I saw this observation was, but in the account of creation, then God says many times, and it was good, and the end it was very good. He does not say it was good for man, okay? And then the only good bad statement for man is in where is it? When he creates 2:18, when he creates woman, the Hashem Elohim lo tov heyos adam lavado. It is not good for man to be alone. I will create him a helpmate opposite or corresponding to him. So it also does not use the word ra. Okay, but we're not going to draw Bereshit's parallels. Just wanted to put that out. Okay, Rivki?
Can I just ask the second
sorry,
question?
your second question. Yeah.
Just this is more of a general question, and again, this might just be because I'm not sure yet how this all works.
Sure.
But I thought I remembered from last class that you mentioned that generally Mishlei, the two parts of the pasuk are meant to kind of like have dichotomy or like have like 10 contradictions or something like that. And here it just seems like a basic statement of like obvious almost.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to break that into two questions. Okay, so first question is, what is the relationship between the two halves? So Hudi is correct that most Mishlei psukim in what I call the core of Mishlei, which is chapters 10 through 24, most of them are opposites. You will get a fair number that are not opposites. So this does not seem to be an opposite because it's describing the same person. But you always have to ask the question, what is the relationship between the two halves? Is it cause and effect? Is it sequence? Is it, two aspects of the same thing? So what's the relationship? And then the other question, which we call in this Monday night shiur, we call it Ariel's question because Ariel asked this more than anyone else. But you got it this time, Hudi, which is, this seems obvious. Okay. At least the second half, seems obvious that, that if, there's like, if a violent person entices someone, then of course he'll be doing so to lead him on a path that's not good. Right? I mean, like what? He's leading him on a path that is good. So it's obvious, right? So the paired question on the two questions we ask on psukim that seem obvious are, what is the hava amina? Okay, which means, i.e., what might we think if we, or I guess what would we have thought if Shlomo didn't say this? Okay, and for those of you who are keeping score at home, Johnny on his YouTube channel just released a new video yesterday. It's a part 2 video on analyzing intelligence, where he critiques Brandon Sanderson's view of intelligence in his books, and in the course of the video, he explains what a havamina is. So that's one of the few times when he explicitly references Talmudic analysis in Talmudic analysis terms. And then the other question is, what is the chiddush, the new insight? Okay. So good question so far. All right, Rivki.
Yeah, so I'm also wondering about, like, I know how we're translating Reyahu in terms of like the English, but I'm curious why Shlomo chose to use that word as opposed to a different type of like relationship word.
Okay, so let's say what does his fellow, what does Reyahu, okay, his fellow mean in this context? Okay, and I want to say also, like, what is the denotation and connotation, right? Because it could be that the choice was governed by either. So for example, in the denotation, you could say it means, like I said, anyone who is in the same category as you, like your fellow Jew. It could be your neighbor. It could be someone who is similar to you, so what is it? And then either way, like maybe there's a connotation that he's trying to emphasize. Okay, so both of them. Yeah, next is my dad.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this description of a man of violence, a person of violence, does that describe someone who not just engages in a violent act, but is consumed by violence?
Okay. All right. So so let's have the question as follows. Well, I think the first thing we need to ask here, which maybe no one, I don't know if anyone was going to ask this, but maybe they thought it was a translation question, but what exactly do we mean by Hamas in this context? And then my dad's question is, I guess, what,
There's such a quality to this guy's character.
in what sense is Hamas a quality of this person? In other words, like, what is the relationship between the person as a whole and Hamas in particular, such that we characterize him as a man of Hamas? Okay. And so let's say, just, for example, like if you, I don't know, like if you punch somebody once, does that make you an ish Hamas? Or do you have to punch someone every day? Does Hamas even refer to external actions, or is it your internal temperament? Maybe it's the degree of your anger. So what is the what makes you a man of Hamas? Yeah.
Just one additional thing, unrelated. It seems like for this pasuk, it's especially important to know who is the target, because we're dealing with some danger here.
Right. Okay. So it's an interesting thing here, because this is one of the rare psukim where it does seem to reference the audience in the actual pasuk. We know that the audience at least has to be Re'ehu, his fellow, right? So you could argue that that the audience, the who's the audience question is number 4, but I do think it's still worth asking, who is the audience here? Okay. Obviously, I'm gonna say obviously it is his fellow. Okay, but is the audience broader than that? And then also, who might fall into the category of his fellow? Okay, so for example, you could argue that that's already asked here, but like, let's say, for example, I know one person who's definitely going to fall into this category, the Pesi, the Mishlei's naive simpleton. He's by definition a person who is prone to being seduced. Okay, but can a chacham fall into this trap? What about a tzaddik? I'll just add that here. Can a chacham or a tzaddik? So that's the audience question. Okay, Isaiah.
But doesn't it seem like the bar is set pretty high?
The bar is set pretty high. That in what sense?
In the sense that of what it says, a person of Hamas, of violence, entices his fellow and causes him. So that's not doesn't seem like it's referring to a particular act. It's really setting the bar, like if you indulge in certain behavior, this is you. That's what it sounds like.
Sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Are you talking about for the bar for the fellow, or the bar for the person of Hamas?
For the person who we are attributing the label to of Hamas.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it seems pretty not neutral, but it seems like it's just saying. Well, let's put it this way. Any person is capable of Hamas, but there needs to be some sort of, we need to consider this a quality in the person. So that's really the question that we were asking in number 2, which is, how much Hamas do you need to be a person of Hamas? Like, again, like you get a person who loses his temper once, does that make them a person of Hamas? Like I'm just not sure. So I don't know.
Right, but that's not that. But losing your temper once doesn't speak to influence per se, right? Because the issue the pasuk is talking about enticement,
right,
or influence. So
right,
it's not just the mere act. It's what was the result of that act,
right?
And that's why I'm thinking about or raising the issue of the higher bar, because it's pretty broad, it's pretty general, and there's a message there. It seems
right. Okay, so let me tack on that observation into this question here, which is that at the very least, this quality of Hamas must express itself in an attempt at enticement, right? So what is the bar for that? Yeah. Okay. And implicit in your question as well is where am I going to put this one? Is what makes the ish, the person of Hamas? I'm going to say ish Hamas. What makes the ish Hamas entice his fellow? Okay, meaning what is the motive? Okay, and maybe there's more than one motive, but we should ask the question. Okay, Isaiah.
Okay, I have two questions.
Okay.
First question on the second half. It seems to me like the whole second half is a little bit ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
You could either be saying that he's leading him onto a path that is bad or not good. Sorry.
Yeah.
Or it could be saying that the manner in which he leads him is not good.
Holicho, yeah.
Like derech meaning like the way that he leads him.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So how are we going to break down that question here? So first, let's ask the question we're going to have to ask no matter what is, what do we mean by path? By derech, path, in this context. Okay. Second question is, what exactly is, how do we put this here? What is the orientation of what is the relationship between the ish Hamas, the fellow, and the path? Okay, so I'll just write what you said here. Is the ish Hamas leading his fellow onto a bad path? Sorry, a path that is not good. Or is the not good path? Sorry, is the ish Hamas himself on the not good path, and that is where he's enticing his fellow from? Is that what you're saying?
Not exactly, I think.
Okay. I want to call this out here, because when you translated it and now, I feel like you're reading the pasuk in a way that is just completely not on my wavelength. So you're gonna have to explain to me. Like, it's very simple to me. He's leading him onto a bad path. So where are you seeing an ambiguity here that I'm not seeing?
Derech doesn't have to mean like he's on the path. It could mean bid-derech could mean the way. Holiko bid-derech lo tov means that he's leading him in a manner which is not good, meaning his leadership that is bad. He's leading him, and he leads him in a harmful way, or a bad aid.
Or is ish Hamas? What I'm saying here? Or is ish Hamas leading him in a not good way? Okay, I'll put it like that. I still think it's for me that's not intuitive, but I'll Avital?
Okay, I also have two questions.
Yeah.
One, I don't even know exactly like if this is like necessary, but potentially it could be like part of the like decision making or advice or whatever. But what is like the method of like enticement? Like, is it connected to the fact that he is a person of chaos, violence, robbery, like whatever we want to define it as? Like, is that like, is the enticement specific to that?
Yeah.
Like,
okay, so how does the ish Hamas entice his fellow?
Like, if it's to give a message to the other person, to this friend who I'm not sure why it's his friend, or maybe it's just like a fellow, whatever, then like that would be important. And the second thing is how does Rav Sadia Gaon's translation like potentially change the meaning or the message of the actual?
Okay, yeah. Did we actually ask? We did ask path is not good. Yeah, I'm gonna tack that onto here, which is alternatively, if Sadia Gaon is correct, and the translation is a path that has no good in it, what does that mean? Yeah, and the only reason I'm putting this into that question is just because it is a particular reading and it's on that same question. Yeah, Ayala.
So to add on to question 3 and 4, is it intentional by Ish Hamas?
That's a good question also, right? Sorry, is it intentional, meaning is he intentionally leading him on the not?
Enticing his friend.
Could you do it if it was not intentional? I'm just wondering.
I was imagining not intentional being like this. I don't want to like step into interpretations, but let's say like someone's stealing and it's really enticing to a different guy, but like this
Right.
Hamas is just doing it.
Okay, I hear that. So is this enticement intentional on the part of the Ish Hamas? Yeah. Okay, good. Rivki?
Yeah, I was also wondering that. And I think also like in the word holy cho too, like I feel like that's a very specific lashon to use. So just like Anatayalas, but another question was on also like the B'derach lo tov. I was thinking like if I was writing it, I feel like the most logical way to write it would be, and he leads him on a path of like also Hamas. So like not even just not good, but like why are we not saying that this person is going on a path of Hamas, just like the Ish Hamas in the first place?
Yeah, okay, that's good. That question we can slot into two of these places. One is, I'm going to tack it on to 11. What is the relationship between the Hamas, i.e., the path that the Ish Hamas is on, and the not good path that he leads his fellow on? If it's the same, why use the different term? And if it's different, then what is it? Which is kind of the question also about what is the not good path. Yeah, Hoodie?
Is it possible? Because my brain is going in a direction, but before I finish the thought, I want to know if it's even possible to translate holy cho to refer to the Ish Hamas, where the second part is also referring to him. So the holy cho, he's being led himself. Like if he acts in a certain way and entices his friend, he will be led down this path of lo tov.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I think the only way you could read it, which again is a creative reading, is the Ish Hamas entices his friend, and his friend leads the Ish Hamas on the not good path.
No. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I know we're not supposed to answer, but I'm just gonna say it just to be clear about why I'm asking.
Sure.
Like if you think of lo tov as like lack of like there's no room for redemption, like then can you say that someone who does something like the person in the first part of the pasuk then is being led down this path of not being able to be redeemed, like there's no possible good in his future kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the only reason why I don't think we could read it that way is because we have a reflexive structure in the verb of like leading yourself, and this is not that structure. So I
was checking on the grammar because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So it's not.
I think it's a good idea, but I just it doesn't fit, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, yeah, Isaiah or Tamar. I don't know if
we kind of did ask already, like how the Ish Hamas entices his fellow, but to me, I guess it just seems like surprising because like you wouldn't think violence to be like, I mean, in certain ways you might, but like violence is not really such an enticing thing. It's like a bad thing. So like what is that? Is it if it's in the violence, like how does it even work?
Okay, yeah. So I think there's one question which we did not directly ask, and I think if you combine, another question is what allows his fellow to be enticed, and that's not the same question as who is Re'ehu, who is his fellow, because I think given the fact that we don't know who is in that category, it might be a different thing based on what kind of person you said it is. In other words, for example, like let's say we say that a chacham could be enticed. I think that enticement is going to look different than if a fool is enticed. So I think this question you just asked, I think if we answer these questions, what's the motive? Actually, these 4 questions. What's the motive? How does he do it? What allows his fellow to be enticed? And then is it intentional or not? I think among all those 4, we'll get what you're asking. Yeah, Ariel?
Yeah, did we ask what the definition of an Ish Hamas is?
No, we did not. Well, we asked. Yeah, we did. Sorry, we asked what Hamas is, and we asked what Ish Hamas is. Yeah.
In what sense quality of this? In what sense is Hamas a quality of?
What is an Ish Hamas?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was that was a different question in my mind. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have all of them. Let's just see if we got. Let's just look it over one more time. Oh, one question which we may not get to is, let's see, where would I look for this? This is 20. Oh, this is 16. So if you look at the psukim that we've done in context here, okay. So we have we're in the middle of this this local cluster. Last week we did a lawless sorry. Oh, we're at the end of this local cluster. 2 weeks ago we did Ish Blial Kore Rav Al Savaso Ke'esh Tsaravis. A lawless man plots evil, and on his lips is a burning firebrand. Last week we did Ish Tapuchos Yishalach Madon. A duplicitous man causes strife. Venirgan Mafrid Aloof. And a complainer alienates a leader. And then here we have our pasuk. So the question I want to ask here is, let me actually just paste this part into our document at the top. So what is the relationship between or I guess how does what is the unity / flow of these last 3 psukim? Which is also saying, how does our pasuk fit in? We also did not ask, what is the practical decision-making idea? Okay, so we got a lot of questions out of this one. All right, so let me copy and paste these into the chat, and I will just explain what we're doing now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take what we call our thinking minute, which is where we think for a minute. And then we will share our interpretations and half-baked answers or full answers. But because Zoom is Zoom, I need to go and manually change all the numbers in this next shipment of questions, which is why I am talking and not allowing this to be dead time. Okay, what's the relationship there? And then we got 3 more questions, which are 13, 14, and 15. Okay, so let us take our thinking minute.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Just about the whole chaos situation, and maybe this is leading on to what I'm thinking about, but for chaos, like, does it have to be like not included in the idea of violence and like or robbery?
So, I'm gonna go ahead and put my foot down here. You guys keep saying chaos. I do not accept that as a translation. If you can show me that it's a real translation.
No, I'm not asking as a translation.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying as like the concept of like with violence, like within the idea of violence.
So ask it one more time.
Okay, basically not that I would be translating Hamas as literal chaos.
Yeah.
But like if you can include chaos within the, I guess, umbrella of violence.
The way that I would include it in there is that an effect in the society definitely is a chaos.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Because a removal of order, from the violence. But yeah, whether you could include it in the person's character, that I don't know. I'm not sure about. Yeah. Okay, let's take our thinking minute now. Oh, and also I'll just for the procedure's sake, I will say the way we do the procedure here is if you have an idea, use the hand raise feature, and we'll go in that order. And then if you want to chime in on someone else's idea, you use the party, stream. We never really have a good term for it. The party, we call it the party signal, but yeah. Okay, Isaiah, let's start with you.
All right, my idea feels a little obvious. Maybe the problem will be what's the chiddush.
Okay.
So the person of violence, I feel like the way that he entices his friend is that he, in order to cause his violent ends to occur, he needs more people. He needs people on his side accomplishing his goals with him. Needs to rob the bank. He needs a team, or he needs to get the people on his side for the revolution. Like he needs people in order to do his violent ends. And so what it's pasuk is saying is like he actively goes and like recruits people for Hamas.
Yeah.
Like what the pasuk is saying is that those people, like he might accomplish his goals, but the people that he recruits end up on a bad path, living bad lives because they're just living lives engaged in violence, and unless they like for them it's just doing an act of violence, and I guess like he's not interested in, I would say like the Ish Hamas isn't necessarily like interested in their good. He's interested in accomplishing his goals. And so like he's not going to be supporting them, let's say, once the violence is accomplished, or like in that kind of circumstance. So he's putting them in a bad spot.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that is good. I'm actually going to support what you're saying with the opening parak of Mishlei, okay, which I think it's been a while since we've read that. And so this is actually one, I think he's describing this exact case here. Okay, so hold on a second here. So the very first thing he warns his son about in terms of bad stuff, he says, B'ni, my son, B'ni, my son, im yifatucha chatayim al toveh, if sinners seduce you, okay, there's a seduction, do not yield to them. Im yomru, if they say, l'cha itanu, come with us, nerva l'dam, let us wait in ambush for blood. Nitzpana l'naki chinam, we will hide out for an innocent person for no reason, or without cause. Okay, I mean, it doesn't mean without cause. You're going to see that they want to steal money, but it means like we're not selecting this victim based on who they are. It's random in the sense of the victim. Nivlaim kish olchaim, we will swallow them alive like the grave. Utumimim kior bor, and like those who descend to the pit hole. Kol hon yakar nimsa, we will find all types of precious wealth. Nimale vatenu shalal, we'll fill our houses with spoils. Goracha tapil b'zochenu. So here's how he's enticing them. With the money, he says, cast your lot with us. Kis echa yiheh lekulanu, we will have one wallet, one pouch for all of us. Okay, so that's what they say. But then he says, B'ni, my son, al telech b'derech itam, do not go on the path with them. This is going on the path there. Mana raglcha minisivasam, withhold your foot from their paths. Ki raglehem lara yarutzu, their feet run to do evil. V'yimahu lishpach dam, and they hasten to spill blood. Ki chinam mazora harashas b'einei kol balkanam. So he switches into analogy here. The net is spread wide with free bait in the eyes of every winged creature. In other words, you think that you're just going to get this money, but treat that like a trap, a bird trap. V'heim ladamam yeru, they are lurking for their blood. Yitzpenu lanafshosam, waiting for their souls, for their lives. Okay, we don't exactly know who the they is. Is the they the people who are going to catch the thieves, or is it the thieves themselves are waiting for members of their own group so that they could take advantage of them? Kain orchos kol botzei abata, so are the ways of all who steal. Es nefesh ba'alav yikach, the life of wealth's owner will be taken. And I think that's also an intentional ambiguity there. Is it that they're going to end up killing someone, the robbers, or is it that their own lives are going to be at stake? And I think the second reading fits in better with the bird analogy. In other words, you think you're robbing from someone, but really you're going to get your life extinguished. So that's the first warning in Mishlei. And Isaiah's idea here basically is that that if you are approached by a man of violence, he will entice you by, I mean, Isaiah didn't say this, but he'll entice you by promising certain things. And I think, Isaiah, I'm going to take liberties with your idea here. So I'm going to put this into additional commentary, but disagree if you disagree. Okay, is that you, the fellow, okay, may be lured by the prizes that the Ish Hamas is after, okay, but that could cause you to mistake his recruitment for caring about your self-interests. Okay, in reality, he's only in it for himself, and he's using you to get that. And you know, when push comes to shove, okay, or when he's done, you'll be left in a bad state, and he won't care about you. Yeah, Isaiah?
I agree with this. I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to point out that Tamara also has an idea.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just think 1 second here. I think I had one more thing I want to say about your idea here. Okay, so that's the interesting thing. Okay, so there's really a double seduction going on. Okay, there's the seduction that he uses to convince him to join his cause, and then there's that's the explicit seduction, and there's an implicit seduction that he is doing this for your benefit, or that somehow he cares about you, in terms of like he's, because you might say like, well, why would he have me join his gang if he doesn't care about me? Well, if the answer is because he cares about himself, So I just want to add that here is there's a double seduction. The explicit, reasons he gives you to join his crime adventure. Okay, I don't know why I said that. And the implicit seduction that he cares about what happens to you. Yeah. Okay. Tamar.
Okay. I think it's kind of I'm not sure if it's a similar idea.
We can always merge it if need be.
Okay. Yeah. Of something like someone who does violent crime, maybe let's say robbery.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking of it more as like, there's a lot of people who would never steal. That it's just like unthinkable. And I think that when you see someone do it, it kind of like breaks I'm not sure if this is the right word, but it kind of like breaks the taboo in a way that pushes everybody to be a little worse.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's good. So that is taking the stance that this is not talking about conscious, deliberate seduction, that he's like recruiting, like Isaiah was saying, right? This is like you end up being seduced by like being Re'ehu, even by like being into the vicinity of him. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's a nice idea. Okay, so there are people who would never commit robbery, robbery or violent crime or whatever is included in Hamas. Okay, but when you see them doing that, it breaks the taboo, and I guess renders you susceptible to falling onto this bad path. I mean, this is not exactly the same thing, but I'll tell you my first association. Isn't there something that they call like the broken windows effect or something of that sort, where like if
broken windows theory.
Right. So I don't know what modern psychology says about this, but like that basically like the analogy, where the analogy comes from is, let's say you see like a rundown warehouse or whatever like that, and all the windows are intact. So the likelihood of someone going and vandalizing this pristine thing, fine, you might get a person who like really wants to break windows or is really whatever, but once he opens that door by breaking that first window, and now people see like, oh, this is something we can do. So then like it makes more people prone to it. That's like the basic thing. So that's not exactly what Tamara's saying, but it's a similar effect where like you see someone, you might just grow up with, I think most people in the societies that we live in are not Anshe Hamas, So your default is not going to be to do Hamas, but then when you see someone do that, I'm sure there are kids who the first time they see someone shoplift, they realize like, oh, I could just do this, and it's just never occurred to them because like that's not what you're supposed to do. And then when they see that and they see that they get away with it, it dissolves that taboo, and then that makes it bad. Yeah, that's a good interpretation. Okay, Rifki, you're up.
Okay, so there's a lot going on in my mind.
Okay. Chaos? No.
Yes, exactly, yeah. But not Hamas.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is, and maybe this is, I don't know if we can really say this, so I guess let me know, and then maybe I'll try to think about how to fix it. But I was thinking in my head, like, I feel like Hamas, like whether you're translating it as violence or robbery or violent crime, in my head, kind of what combines all of them is like a lack of correct morals.
Okay.
So I was thinking like, and it could be, I just watched actually Shawshank Redemption with my parents.
Oh,
yeah. So it could be like all those,
yeah.
my brain, but I feel like that idea of like, if you have, and I think this also speaks to why it's Re'ehu, like if you have strong morals, and obviously Shlomo would be saying like, follow the Torah, like the Torah is like the set of morals you should be following. But if you have those strong morals, then you won't be enticed by this Ish Hamas, whether it's intentional or not. Like I don't feel strongly one way or another. Like if the Ish Hamas is intentionally doing it, like I can see both ways fitting in my idea. Because I think if you have that foundation, you're just much less likely, like even let's say in Tamar's idea, that, let's say not me, but if someone saw someone doing something like, let's say stealing from a store, if you grew up with the notion that stealing is wrong for X, Y, and Z reason, and they're really based in like, not just reality, but whatever, in every sense of the word, then you're not going to be enticed by that, even if you might, be like, oh, well, it's easier. Because what I was thinking is in terms of just the enticement, like, I think we have this part of us, like every single person in different areas has like I guess you can say like a Yetzer Hara for something. And I think like we sometimes think, oh, it'll just be so much easier. Like, I don't want to have to be moral about this.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what the enticement of the Ish Hamas is as much, it seems easier to do something in an immoral way, whether it could be because it's faster or because you don't want to be moral. Like sometimes we just don't want to be moral.
Yeah.
So that's kind of for the first half of the idea. Do you want to say or critique anything before?
I want to hear the full idea first, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for the second half, I was just thinking about, okay, like my question of like, why not Hamas? Because I think that the type of person that's being spoken about, the Re'ehu, he doesn't have to go to the full extent of Hamas. Like in my head, I have like, it's almost like a spectrum.
Wait,
like
you just said the words, why not Hamas? Did you mean to say why not good?
No, meaning like, because remember my whole thing about why does it not say
oh yeah, why does it not say Hamas
Yeah.
on the path of Hamas? Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that it's like a spectrum of like, in my head, Hamas is more specific, but probably worse. Whereas Lo Tov is a general idea of like, even if you're not doing things that are as negative or as destructive as the Ish Hamas, you're still going to be doing negative things in the world instead of helping the world like achieve like goodness and positivity. You're doing the opposite, even if it's not as bad as what the person you're being influenced by is doing.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't disagree with anything you said. I think my questions are, number one, I don't I would I don't know if this is a fair question, but yeah, let me think about it for a second. Yeah, like I can't disagree with the fact that if you have stronger morals, then you won't be enticed. But I feel like I'm not seeing it in the pasuk, and I don't know if we need to see it in the pasuk. That's like that this has to do with like having strong morals. I also just feel like the specificity. I feel like if you inserted any bad guy into the first half instead of Ish Hamas, then I feel like the idea that you're saying would also be true. And then the question is like, what's the specificity or what's the specific idea of the pasuk? So maybe that's my bigger question here is like this is true, but why specifically an Ish Hamas when all bad people can influence those who lack strong morals? Yeah. So again, not like a knockout question, just like I think that would be a good area to develop it in. Yeah. Okay, Ariel, you're up.
Okay. I will be speculating.
Okay.
So just be mindful of that.
Okay. Thank you. That actually does help. Yeah, okay.
Okay. I want to start off by saying that I think that this pasuk is to make you aware of how human psychology operates.
Unlike all the other pasukim in Mishlei. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
And the truth is I'm kind of getting this from an idea that was expressed at Rav Pesach's house. And we were questioning, this statement. I forgot who said it. I think maybe it was Churchill or someone stated that like that bad news travels across the world before the truth puts on his pants.
Yeah, right.
And on that,
Yeah.
we asked Rav Pesach, it was a Friday night meal, why is that so?
Yeah,
What's so unique about that? And Rav
right.
Pesach mentioned that there's something alluring about bad news, about
Mhm.
something that it's enticing. There's something, I don't know, like,
I mean, we definitely see that that's the case. I mean, the
yeah.
newspapers aren't selling good news.
So I wanna take that idea
Yeah.
and kind of expand it onto, violence.
Okay.
I think that deep down, for some people, it's not so deep. For others, it's deeper down.
Yeah.
I think that a part of us, human nature, likes violence.
Okay.
I think that's the speculative part. And that might be because of our animalistic instincts. That just might be because of, I don't know, that's just human nature at its core. We're animals, whatever. But
Yeah.
I think that, and the friend, I think it's a friend. I think it's an actual friend. I think we have friends who may be more violent than others. I think that, and I think that because we are already friendly with these people, our guards are naturally down. Our
Mhm.
guards are not, we're not, like, of course, if someone we don't know on Mott Avenue, is advertising, hey, let's rob a bank, I'm not gonna, like, that's crazy. I'm not gonna do that.
Right.
But I think that, like, if he's your friend, you may just do it without you even consciously being aware of this fact. So you have to be more open. You have to be more guarded, extra guarded in identifying, Hamas behaviors from your friend.
Okay, so let me just I think I'm getting this, but I want to make sure I'm not reading into your idea. So you're saying that deep down, then there is a part of every person that seeks or enjoys or is driven for violence or whatever. So I'm fine accepting that. Okay, and then you're saying that this is talking. He's specifically warning you about being enticed by a friend who is Ish Hamas. Now, here's the part that I'm not sure about. Are you saying that because you naturally identify with your friend, that it could be very easy for that part of you to be activated just through the identification, whereas if it's a stranger, it's not going to be activated in that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's hard to imagine that, look, just because we all have this, nature in us, that we're automatically going to act like violent. Like, that's crazy.
Okay.
It may spark something within us, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to make you act.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Okay. And then did you explain the second half or not yet?
Well, no, that was the second half.
Oh, that was the second half. Okay, right. So well, I mean, because everything that you're saying fits into the first half, right?
I
mean, like, in other words,
no, you're right.
and
You're
then,
right.
Yeah. And I think according to this, Rivki's question becomes much stronger, which is, why doesn't it say that he'll seduce you to do violence? Now, maybe you can just answer it. I mean, I have an answer for you, but you want to try answering it first?
Well, yeah, it's like it's like Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
It's like, like, look, he the first couple episodes he wasn't doing bad things. He just went off the derech, and he was neutral, and then he pushed him further.
Okay. So so as a result of that waiting, that part of your psyche could become more and more dominant. And then I think you say what Rivki says, like, even if it doesn't necessarily result in full-blown violence, then it could be it won't be good. And that won't be good. I'll tell you something. I do think I agree with your idea. I think this really pairs with Tamar's idea, if anything, right? Because I think that's the mechanism by which Tamar's idea works, is that, I mean, one of the mechanisms, not necessarily all of it. Tamar was speaking more about the removal of the taboo. But if you pair that, if you're correct, and there is a part of us that is, aggressive. I mean, I know, Freud went through different theories about the most basic structure of the human psyche, but like aggression is definitely one of the one of the candidates.
So it's not speculation.
I mean, it's. I think you could have different models. You could also say, like, there is, I think, a part of us that Chazal call it, the phenomenon, prikas ol, of like casting off the yoke, which is really what the other personality we saw has, is the Belial, person who casts off yoke. There are people who just don't want to be governed by any sort of authority imposed upon them, whether real or in their minds, or even morality itself could be an authority. So whenever you see someone acting violently and casting off morality, it appeals to the part of you that wants to throw off the yoke, So even if it's not about anything that you care about, like I think, in the bank heist example, the guy who's being violent he's engaging in violence as a means to an end, but you could see someone who's just doing senseless violence, like just destroying property, and it could awaken that part of you of wanting to like cast off the yoke. So yeah. All right. I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I don't think it's funny. I don't know if it's because you set it up by saying this is speculative, but I'm totally fine with the idea. But yeah, okay. But I'd rather you be cautious than not.
Like I've been sharing with you for how many years now? I know.
Yeah, I know, right? 4.5 years. Yeah. Okay, Ayala, you're up.
Okay, it's not such a new idea at this point. It's more of like adding on to Ariel's and a little bit of explanation of the second half.
Sure.
So I was going to say similarly to Ariel, well, I guess not that necessarily we all have a part of us that is attracted to violence, but talking about a little bit what you mentioned is like what is attractive about violence or robbery or violent crime. And I think it's all like it comes from a sense of entitlement that the person has, or like a self-centeredness.
Mm-hmm.
And that we all obviously have to some extent and want the world to work that way. And so I think I'm not necessarily taking it that the guy of Hamas is going to specifically like intentionally entice you, but just watching him, you're going to be enticed by that. And even if you don't take it like to the extent that he does, I think slowly, like Tamar's idea, it will slowly like erode at your whatever and like infiltrate your worldview that like, oh wait, I can just do things the way that I want them and hurt other people or whatever to get what I want. And then to explain the second half a little bit, the idea like lo tov, why does it say lo tov instead of like bad or Hamas?
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that like the person who's being enticed sees that this violent guy has a way of getting good without really conforming to reality. And so it's just kind of addressing his havamina that like, no, it's not good. And like, you're going to end up on this path. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's just addressing him.
Okay, no, that's good. So the I actually think it's a bystander because the fellow will see what this guy is doing and feel, I guess, consciously or unconsciously, this is good, or this is a way to get good, and the pasuk is speaking directly to that, saying it is not good. Right. Yeah. Right. That's a good answer. That's a good category of answer to the question, that Mishlei is speaking to the emotion in the emotions terms, Yeah. I like that. And I do think this is a good possibility for why we want it. Is like, yeah, violence is a very self-centered view. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's why, kids are destructive when they tantrum. I don't know. I have no idea where that comes from, but I bet it makes them feel powerful when they are feeling, when they're not getting what they want, and then they assert their power by destroying stuff, which you can do very easily as opposed to creating stuff. I mean, I don't know a kid who throws a tantrum and in the tantrum is building towers. Like, like it's much easier to just destroy stuff. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Yes, you're up.
So, first, I'm having a difficult time moving away from the general wording and intent. I think that's behind the pasuk, which gives us, in my mind, a framework within which to make all of these decisions.
Okay.
And then to the various comments and insights that have been shared. If you think about Breaking Bad as an example, World War II as an example, you have people who, let's say, were educated and perhaps good, who slowly, or somebody who becomes addicted to drugs. You don't start off, I never use heroin, right? But, there's a way to entice people. And that's really where this all starts, with enticement.
Right.
And then you kind of you go down the slippery slope. And then I also had a reaction or a thought on the comment about our attraction to violence.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really connected, or at least I've learned that that's connected more to resilience and survival. You see something bad happen, it ignites that fight or flight reflex in you.
Interesting.
When there's rubbernecking on the highway, it's, you know, you're attracted to it because there's what to learn from. It's not that we're violent by nature, but it's a part of connected to a survival instinct.
Interesting. I've never heard that idea. That's interesting. So it's connected to a survival instinct.
Yep.
And fuels resilience because
Right.
I guess like it allows you in a way to vicariously partake of the suffering of the violence without actually like being subject to it,
or at least to learn from it and how to
from it,
protect yourself. When you hear an ambulance, you hear a horn, a fire alarm, you know your ears perk up. You know, when the sirens go off in Israel, it's designed to protect everyone, right? And but it's not about an inherent violent nature that people have. You go back to Cain and Hevel, so there are many examples of that we can. So I just wanted to share that, and then I also just one last thought. To isolate each issue without taking into account, sometimes there's an illness that would account for, perhaps a mental illness, perhaps some other factor, right? Or the example of a child, limited development, they're not fully developed, so there are other factors that we need to at least consider, which would impact one's decision to be influenced.
Right. Yeah. So actually, this is a good time just to have a reminder here about, I think I've said this point before, but I want to say it again, is the style of Mishlei proverbs versus the style of, let's say, American proverbs. So the style of an American proverb is just to basically deliver you an idea in an appealing and spoon-fed form, like the early bird gets the worm, or like two wrongs don't make a right, and you just get that. The style of Shlomo proverb, and he overtly calls them riddles, early on in the book, divrei chachamim lahavin divrei chachamim v'chidosam, the riddles of the chachamim, sorry, the words of the chachamim and the riddles, and so he writes them in a cryptic way, and oftentimes when we're learning Mishlei, let's say like we have all these possibilities here, and so sometimes we have a multiplicity of possibilities and we don't know what did he mean, or you have like what Yitzhak's pointing out is reality is very messy. There are many factors that can contribute to these things. So what do we do with that multiplicity of explanations and possible causes? How do we what view do we take of this one proverb here? So when I first started learning Mishlei, I think I had this orientation of like, there is, the correct interpretation of the pasuk, or maybe several correct interpretations, and we're trying to get to that. And obviously that is what we're trying to do, because that's what leads to the most productive learning. But what I have over the years shifted to is the benefit of Mishlei. The real benefit of Mishlei is not in the answer, so to speak, but in the fact that the proverb draws you into thinking about the topic from every angle. So we've sat here now thinking about an Ish Hamas and how many different ways the Ish Hamas influences us. And like, if we talk to Shlomo, let's say Tchias Mesim is tomorrow, and we talk to Shlomo and say, Shlomo, what did you mean by this pasuk? And let's say he tells us a meaning that none of us said. So if we asked him, did we still learn Mishlei? He'd be like, oh, of course. Like this is the type of thinking. Like, I'm trying to train you to think about the subjects and the topics. And yeah, I understand real life is more messy. I understand that you could read these proverbs in many ways, but the real benefit of learning the Mishlei is the analysis that we're engaged in here. So I think that's how I would address your question about the statement you made about there are many factors here, and this could take on many forms. That's true, and that's the challenge of applying Mishlei, which is why we always try to like talk it down to take it down to practical application. But like, I think the messiness of our thoughts that we try to sift out, and then I think that's like actually part of the process of the learning, if that makes any sense. We're not like trying to just get we're not trying to pin this to one idea, even though it's one statement.
Right. One might say we're being enticed.
Yes. This is the good kind of enticement. Right. Yeah. Okay, Hoodie, you're up.
Okay, so I'm not sure this adds too much more, but I want to say it anyway, because
Sure.
I was thinking about it when I was listening to, I think it was at this point, Tamar and Ariel, which also brings me to my tangential question, which is that like tada thing that I think you mentioned when someone wants to add to someone else's like thought a little bit,
Yeah.
it goes away pretty fast. So I don't know, like, is that?
Oh yeah, I might have missed it also. I
Yeah.
also have to like happen to be looking up when I see it. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if that's
Sorry
like
about that.
something that anyway. Okay, so I want to just first of all, when Ariel was speaking, it made me think like immediately of Heart of Darkness, Lord of the Flies, like that concept on a societal level where you have like without established rules, and you know, the kind of morality being imposed on people, that there will be like a dissolution of morality.
Yeah.
So then if you go to, let's say, Tamar's thing and just make it more on a societal level where you have like if the same like the when you were talking about broken mirrors, and okay, so last time the word like flew out of my head. I keep thinking mushal, it's not a mushal, but you said that you don't like talking about a certain type of learning in Mishlei, like the one I don't know. Okay, so there was like a story of like like cooling down the bathwater, and I remember learning this, but I don't know the source, and I don't know, it had to do with like again like this idea of like making it easier for other people. It had to do with some nation attacking some other nation.
Are you talking about Amalek attacking
Yeah, maybe,
Israel?
probably.
Right.
Is
And
that
then
is
it's
that a
like
thing?
jumping into the hot water and he gets burned, but it cools down the water for everyone else to be able to
Yeah,
jump
it
in.
makes it easier for everyone else
Yeah.
to attack. Okay, thank you. So I have like these pieces of information that I remember, but it's not all solidified. So so that's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, here you have a situation where it's similar, again, very similar to what Tamara was saying, where if you have like people or a person who is doing something immoral or problematic for society, it just makes it a lot easier for on a societal level for things to break down. And I know again you also said you didn't really want to connect Bereshit to this, but we did see the same language in a situation where there was a total breakdown of society,
Right.
because of something like this. Like people just kept doing wrong things and it was totally normalized.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. When I said I didn't want to learn British, I mean I'm not gonna. I meant I don't want to go find all the linguistic parallels between
Okay.
them. And go on that, but obviously British is an example of this. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Okay. Last is my dad, and then we'll I'll share what I was thinking, and then we'll go to maybe a couple of meforshim, and then call it a night. Yeah.
Okay, this is just a question, and see if it applies to the pasuk at all. Do we consider Navy SEALs and Mossad agents ish Hamas?
That's a very good question, right? Because I think we've kind of been assuming that Ish Hamas is bad, right? But strictly speaking, an Ish Hamas could be someone who engages in acts of violence. Soldiers are forced to do acts of violence, and it doesn't, they may not be bad, but it might have an effect. I would be open to taking an approach like that. Yeah. Yeah,
that's us in the pasuk, but
okay, no, that's a good possibility. I'm just gonna write this down. Is that that what if Ish Hamas isn't necessarily bad, but is someone who engages in violent actions, even for the good. Okay, for example, a soldier. So the executioner. There's the Sefer HaChinuch in his explanations of mitzvos is very big into the idea that your behavior can shape your character, and that you could take someone who is a tzaddik, and if you force him to do a certain kind of action, then it will make him into a bad character. Contrary to the approach that Rivki was taking, but like you take a tzaddik and you force him to do abusive actions, whatever, it's going to actually change him into not a tzaddik. No matter how strong his morals were, and then vice versa. So there's a statement of Chazal that says something like, the best of butchers is a friend of Amalek. The idea being that if you are a butcher and you spend your whole day killing animals, it will breed cruelty in you, even though there's nothing wrong with slaughtering animals, but just doing that action again and again and again, it'll desensitize you. It will cater to these aggressive, violent emotions that we were talking about, and it will have an effect on you in a bad way. Yeah, so I think you could take it that way. I don't know how we would play it out for the rest of the pasuk. And here, by the way, I would point to the context here that these people we've been talking about in this local cluster are bad. But in principle, you're right. This could be just someone who does violence. But I think the people we've been talking about here, actually, that's not even true. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, because last week we said that Ish Tapuchos is not bad. We said that in Tanakh Ish Tapuchos is bad. We had a good interpretation that it was not necessarily bad, but yeah. Okay, so let me share the approach that I was working on this afternoon, and then we'll go to some meforshim. Let me see if I can remember it now. So mine was close to it wasn't close to anyone. I don't know. Okay, I'll just say it. Okay. So I also was going off of Isaiah's assumption that why is this Ish Hamas recruiting people? Because there's strength in numbers, or because the particular type of violence that he plans to do requires people. Like, a gang can't do a lot of the stuff that gangs do if they're alone. That's why you have a gang is to be able to gang up on people. That's the expression, and also there may be, I don't know the psychology of the Ish Hamas enough, but there may also be a power dynamic here where when he recruits people, like, for example, you have like bullies, you have like, let's say, like, I don't know if this is a negative term, alpha bullies and like beta bullies. There's like the lead bully, and then he recruits all the other kids who are also into being mean and beating up on the other kids, but like they're able to be bullied by the head bully, and like they wouldn't necessarily do it on their own, So whatever that dynamic is, okay. So he's gonna recruit the people. So it could be for as a means to an end, or it could be for an end in and of itself. In other words, it could be to rob a bank, or it could just be for all the aggression and power and all the stuff that we've been seeing. Okay. So that's the first half, is that the Ish Hamas is going to recruit people. So if you see an Ish Hamas, which is, by the way, one of the things, it is easy to tell who an Ish Hamas is. Certain Mishlei personalities you might not be able to diagnose, but if you see a person who is constantly being violent or constantly robbing, like, that's Ish Hamas. Okay, so he's going to try to recruit. But here's the catch. Okay, is that by making you do Hamas, it's obvious that you're going to be influenced and you're going to do Hamas. Okay, but what's not obvious is all of the other costs that you're going to incur by being recruited by him. So let's say in Mishlei's first chapter, the kid who gets recruited by the gang, okay? So obviously he's going to be doing violence. That's why they're recruiting him. So the pasuk doesn't need to say that. But what else is going to happen? Well, he is going to have to, I'm just making stuff up, okay? He's going to have to do these operations at night, okay? So he's going to have to sneak out, and it's going to affect his sleep, and it's going to affect his grades, and it's going to breed distrust with his parents, and he is going to be hanging out with people who have bad midos, and he's going to be needing to avoid, avoiding situations that are going to make him feel guilty. So maybe he's not going to be going to shul, or he's not going to be learning. There are a bunch of other costs that are incurred by being recruited by the Ish Hamas. So the thing is that you might think to yourself, oh, well, it really is Breaking Bad. Just not the usual thing we get out of Breaking Bad, but like he went into it, Walter White went into it thinking that he's just going to be doing this crime and then getting the money, and then that's it. He did not realize how many other bad influences he would be exposing himself to, and the secrecy, is going to wreck his marriage, and it's going to wreck the fact he had a good relationship with his son who looked up to him, and then when his son finds out that his father is a criminal, it wrecks that relationship. So there are all these other costs, and that's why I think he uses the word lo tov. Because first of all, I think plain shot is lo tov is more inclusive than ra. Ra is, oh, you're going to become a bad guy. No, that's true. You might become a bad guy, but it's also going to bring you into all these paths that are not good. In a way, I think this might be a capstone of, hold on, I hope this works. Was this in our shiur, or was this in the morning shiur? The paths of death. I think that was our shiur, right? Yeah. Yesh derech yashar lifnei ish v'achrisa darchei maves. There is a path that is upright before a person, but its ways are ends are ways of death. I don't know if you can argue that there's a super unit here. We did see that it that there was a turning point. So but this is an example of that. So that's what I was thinking here. So in other words, what's the chiddush? The chiddush is that be on guard against men of violence who will recruit you, and the way they'll tend to recruit you, the way they might recruit you is just for a one last heist or whatever, But the thing is that it will corrupt you in other ways that have nothing to do with violence, but are needed in order to sustain or cover up the violence. And that's I think that's the lesson there. Okay, let's do a couple meforshim, unless anyone has any questions. Matsudas David. I think this one actually supports Tamar, but we'll see. Okay, I shouldn't have said that. I don't want to prejudice you. Yifate re'ehu, let's change it to entices his fellow. Le'echos gam hu b'darchei hamas, to also adopt ways of paths of violence. Umolicho b'derech lo tov, and he will lead him on a not good path. Limso chaver la'atzmo, to find a friend for himself. Okay. So what do you think the main idea is there? I don't think any of us said this in explicit terms here. So in other words, the violent man will recruit someone on his paths of violence, that we have said, and lead him on a bad path to find a friend for himself. Yeah, Hoodie?
Kind of like to validate his lifestyle. Like
I
maybe
think
to
so.
kind of like,
Yeah, I think so also. So that's why I think it's related to tomorrow's thing, is that if he's engaged in crime alone, then it's harder to justify. But if he can create a social group in which they all validate and rationalize for each other, then he can live with himself. So in other words, he's looking for a friend for two reasons. A, the practical, okay, like we mentioned, and B, the to assuage his guilt and facilitate his criminal lifestyle. Yeah. Now, does this have a nafkamina? Does this have a practical outcome? Like, in other words, in a practical application setting, like, does this matter in terms of, like, the practical application we've all had here is like, beware of being seduced by a person of violence here. But does this matter? Like, is there a nuance of the idea we could get out of this in terms of being on guard against being enticed by someone like this? I mean, yeah, Hoodie.
kind of like maybe from the other direction. If you see a lot of, again, like don't see it as validated. Like just because people are doing it does not mean it's okay.
Right. So first of all, I guess resist validating their behavior and having them validate your behavior. Which, by the way, here's a good application off of this, which is if you find yourself in a relationship like this, what is going to be a solution or antidote based on this idea? Say again?
Leaving the relationship.
Yeah, leaving the relationship. Let's say you're attached to the relationship, I'd say is find friends who oppose the behavior. Okay. And you will find this happen with people, let's say, like, you just brought up drug addiction. I mean, there will be cases where someone will be, have an addiction, and they'll form their social group where they feel validated in that, and they will drift away from their other healthier relationships, So like, if you are either in that position of being enticed yourself, or if you have a friend who's being enticed, it is very important for the welfare of that would-be victim to keep the relationship that produces conflict, like sustain the relationship that promotes internal conflict, cognitive dissonance, that's the word I'm looking for, cognitive dissonance, and that could be a lifeline. Yeah, Hoodie?
No, I thought I had something to add, but I don't think so anymore.
Okay, sure. Okay, anyone else? Yeah, Rifki.
Yeah, I'm not sure if maybe this was said in a different idea or if it doesn't fit into what my Alexa's going off, into what he's saying. But can we also say, like, in terms of the finding a friend? Hold on, I'm just gonna.
Sure.
My God.
If you have to evacuate the building, go ahead and do that. Mishlei is important, but
my Alexa was just trying to play white noise.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, when he says like finding a friend for himself, could we also say like it's like a cyclical nature of like he was like recruited and then like he through like and so on and so forth.
That's a good point here, right? Is that that the Metzudas David seems to indicate that this could be a vicious cycle. He recruits someone else he befriends someone else, who will then befriend someone else, et cetera. Yeah. This I can imagine also being very important. I know Shlomo in that first paragraph was talking about this, but like parenting advice, is being aware of these cycles happening, with people who are under your charge, whether it's your kids or your students, or anyone in that category. Okay, any other ideas on the Metzudas? If not, we'll do one more, and then we'll stop. Okay, let's do one more. I only glanced at this. I didn't work on it, which is the Miuchas Radak. Okay, so just some background here. We don't usually do the Radak here. So let me just cover this for a second, just so I can have my little soapbox here. Okay, so I love Radak. Okay, Radak is one of my favorite commentaries on Nach. If I had to pick one commentary on Nach to learn, in terms of if you said I could only get one commentary on Nach, it would be the Radak, because he comments on everything and he gives pshat, and he is rational, and he gives ideas, and he quotes midrashim. It's like everything you want in a commentator, okay? But the Radak on Mishlei, there's a big machlokes whether it is written by the Radak, okay? So I notice, there are people who are experts in various Rishonim. So the expert in Radak is Naomi Grunhouse. And so I read in her book that the Radak on Mishlei is not written by the Radak. And she has a paper on it. So I read her paper, and it's very compelling because she says, for example, the Radak was a grammarian, and the grammatical knowledge exemplified here in his commentary on Mishlei does not reflect his actual grammatical knowledge. There are things that contradict his grammatical positions. Secondly, the Radak's brother and father were also grammarians, and Rav Yosef Kimchi and Rav Moshe Kimchi, father Yosef, brother Moshe. And Radak is always quoting them, but he never quotes them here. It seems like the author of this commentary on Mishlei only knew Rashi and did not have access to other meforshim, whereas the Radak is always quoting other meforshim. So I asked Rabbi Novetsky on Al HaTorah why he lists it as Radak and not attributed to Radak. So he sent me a 50-page paper or something like that by another expert who argues against Naomi Grunhouse and says that this is Radak. I'm of the opinion that this is not Radak, but it does not mean it's a bad commentary. Okay, so let's see what he says here. Ish Hamas, Mishu Bal Hamas B'tivo, someone who is naturally inclined to violence. So he's saying it's not someone who engages in acts of violence, someone who has a violent nature. Yifate Ri'ehu will entice his fellow, V'yasisenu lihios kamohu, and will incite him to become like himself. Yifate is yite, meaning he'll deceive him or mislead him. Pen yifte levavim, like we say in the Shema, lest your heart be seduced. Shetargumu yite, like the Targum says, mislead. Ki misader lefanav tainos umiyafe lo asiyas hachamas. He will present arguments before him and beautify the act of violence. Kamoshe ose hasarsur lahanaaso shemate hasokrim betanosav, like a broker who deceives merchants with persuasive claims for his own benefit. So I saw this, I was like, oh, that's interesting, So summary here is he is a violent natured person will make arguments and glorify, we use the expression glorify violence, to his fellow in an attempt to make him similar, okay? Just like a merchant peddles his wares. So question is, what's the idea here? I feel like this is not something that I feel like none of us said this, right? And this is answering the question of how he entices him, And if we could maybe work with an example, that might be that might help us. I mean, here's one example. I mean, in like most rap music glorifies the criminal lifestyle and engaging in these criminal activities, and actually like paints a picture of like this is the life. Yeah, Ayala?
I don't know if this is the main idea, but a thought that I had based off of his idea of like a merchant peddling his wares.
Yeah.
It reminded me of, I forgot whose idea it was, which said that kind of like the man of violence wants to recruit other people, and he'll bring them into his plan and like make them think it'll be good for them, and then ultimately he'll abandon them.
Yeah.
I think it's just interesting the way that he says it, that like you have to remember that the man of violence is a salesman. He's like literally like advertising his violence to you. Like I think just when you like, that's like a different emotional perspective to have. That like he's pitching the idea to you. He's not just like trying to have your best interest.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. And if you are on guard against that, knowing he'll need to recruit, then maybe you can resist. And I'll add here, I think this is kind of implicit in what you're saying, is we wouldn't be inclined to think of him this way if Shlomo didn't tell us. I mean, the very fact that none of us came up with this, means that we didn't think of it. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think this is a good companion or addition to the other ideas that we had. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a standalone idea. Yeah, Rifki.
So I'm just also like thinking about gangs, like also the whole time. Would you think this would be like the best example of like a gang style, or more like a different, like, the befriending one, or both?
I think it could be both. I mean, I think gangs do need to market. I mean, it's a funny word to use, but gangs have brands, and they do need to market the lifestyle to recruit, especially in, most of the time you don't just have one gang, you have different gangs, and so there might be a common population that or at least potential common population in terms of influence. And look, I don't know how common it is for there to be like, I don't know the dynamics enough, but I do think it could be both. Yeah. Okay, so let's summarize what we have here and then call it a night. So we had our idea starting with, where did I go? Oh, here we go. So there's Isaiah's idea, which is that on the most practical level, violent people will recruit others because they need them, but they'll lure you by promising you some of the good that they're going to get, or some other good. But you should be aware of the fact that they're just using you. So not only is the thing that they're going to seduce you for going to be harmful and expose you to harms, but they'll dispense with you as soon as they're done with you. I mean, I've used this example before, but the best example of this in film that I've seen, the most efficient, is in the opening scene of The Dark Knight, where you have all of the people robbing the bank, and then after each one does his job, then the other one kills him, and no one is thinking about the fact that there's a guy who's going to do that to them, like that. It's a very, very good illustration of this. So that's the double seduction, is the reasons to join, and then the seduction that you think that this person actually cares about you and that they have your interests in mind. It's really the opposite. They have their interests in mind and they don't care about you, and they're just using you for their interests. Okay, then you have this cluster of ideas here about the attraction of the Hamas, either, and that's the seduction, is that you are seduced into thinking that Hamas is not bad or that it's good. So either they break the taboos, like Tamar said, or like Hoodie said, is it has like a societal effect of making people think that this is okay, and that can spread. We have Ariel saying that there is some deep part of us that enjoys or craves violence, and having a friend who you identify with can awaken that in you. You have Ayala's idea that the violence is acting out in a certain very self-centered way, and that could awaken that in you as well. You have Yitz's idea about there is an evolutionary benefit of like being attracted to violence for the sake of learning or survival, which is not necessarily conscious. In fact, most of the time not conscious. Okay, then we had Rifki's idea, which we did not fully develop, about the antidote to being seduced in this way is having strong morals, and the lo tov is because they might not make you into full-fledged ish Hamas, but they'll leave you in a bad place, or a place where you're exposed to badness because of your dissolution of your morals. And then we had my idea, which I didn't write down, actually. I just want to write this down here. My idea is that the ish Hamas will recruit people and either as an end or a means. But Hamas is, I didn't really say this clearly. Hamas is such a, I guess, this is not a good word, an extreme lifestyle that you can't just dip your toe into it. But you'll have to, like, take it on, and that will immerse you in the path of Hamas and remove you from many other good paths, which all of which will have consequences that you weren't on guard against, because those evils don't look like Hamas. Okay, so the example I gave was I'm not going to type it all out, but like the kid who is drawn into a gang, and that ends up wrecking all his other relationships and prospects and ambitions and social groups, social dynamics, etc., in ways that aren't directly connected with Hamas. Okay, then we had Metzudas David, who said that he's going to recruit you as a friend. So we said, in addition to the practical benefits, he's going to want validation for his lifestyle. And we said the practical outcome here is that you should resist giving or receiving that validation if you find yourself drifting towards relationships like that, and surround yourself with people who will cause you to be in cognitive dissonance so that you can hopefully break away from that and use them as a lifeline. And then Rifki pointed out that this could be a self-perpetuating cycle. And then we have the attributed to the Radox idea that that you should view the violent man as a salesman, who's going to pitch stuff. And if you view him as a salesman, you're going to be on guard as if you're trying to be sold goods not in your best interest. Don't just view him as a dumb a brute, even if he's violent in that way. Okay, this is a very good pasuk. A lot of questions here, but a lot of nice ideas about this Ish Hamas, who I don't think we've analyzed before. I'll have to see how often he appears in Mishlei. Okay, I believe this is going to be our last time before Pesach. I don't want to bank on there being shiur Monday, because I'm getting in to Seattle the night before, and everyone's busy for Pesach anyway. So I think we'll just break until probably not the Monday right after Pesach. So probably the week after that. But stay tuned. Okay. But thanks for coming, and till next time. Have a good night.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.